Hi, folks. The Filipina P here. And we all have to trust someone our doctor, our lawyer, our auto mechanic. But what happens when someone you trusted robs you blind? Well, that's easy. You collect the evidence and call the police. But what if you're a foreigner here in the Philippines? Will our legal system work in your favor? Will it work at all? Well, today we're gonna hear an amazing story from a foreigner in that exact position and the crazy roller coaster ride he had to endure in his quest for justice. But as with anything Filipino, the tale doesn't just involve police and lawyers. Somehow, it also involves cockfighting, snorkeling, and free desserts. This is one story you gotta hear. Hello, everyone, and this is Bert. Thanks for coming. And you have a very interesting story to tell us today.
Interesting, tragic, yes, something along these lines.
Okay. How long
I
have you been here?
well, I've been here 12 years. I have an office in the Philippines here,
Okay.
and I'm kind of back and forth between Seattle and Philippines. And my story revolves around the office, and this might be shocking, but I had some theft occur at the office.
Oh, okay. Well, you've been here for 12 years and you know the ins and outs of the
Yeah.
Philippines, and you've been screwed. So tell us about it.
Yeah, so I had a manager that managed to make off with 4.3 million pesos. And the story's interesting in a few ways. It's interesting how he did it,
Okay.
and it's interesting what happened afterwards. It was a very Philippine experience for me. So,
So someone stole 4.3 million pesos?
yeah. And interestingly enough, he did it through with a little help in the banking system. So, normally for our office, we would wire payroll in peso. We would convert it to pesos and wire. And he told me about having a US dollar account that you could have that.
So wait, the bank, the Philippines bank, is in cahoots with the manager?
Not the Philippine bank, but a manager in the bank happened to be a former classmate of his. So
Oh, okay.
that helped. So yeah, what he did was he set up a separate account, a dollar account. You know, I don't know if you've opened a bank accounts here, but it requires a lot of paperwork, and you even have to have board signatures, and it's quite a process. Well, this one he said we wouldn't need any of that because it was just a sweep account. The money couldn't be withdrawn, and it would be in dollars. He would get a preferred rate, and it would sweep across.
Okay.
So that sounded reasonable to me. So anyway, we got this set up, and this crime happened over the course of 12 to 15 months where I would wire the US dollars. He would actually make the bank give him the US dollars, which is quite a big chunk. It was the entire month payroll. And then he would take a little for himself. He would exchange it for the pesos, and he made them get the pesos out too. And then he would just deposit the pesos that he wanted to deposit.
Is this the normal way they do things in the bank?
Definitely not. And one of my first questions for the bank was, hey, didn't that seem a little unusual to you guys? And why didn't you call us? And their answer was, well, we didn't have any contact people on the banking form to open the account. It was kind of funny how we discovered this. I was with my assistant and we walked into the bank and said, hey, we've had this issue. We knew we had an issue, but we didn't know what it was yet. And so we asked the banker, could you pull the information for our account? And they pulled that. And we said, well, there's another account, we think. It was a kind of sweep account.
Okay.
Oh, yes, we have another account registered. Could we see the paperwork for that? And I pulled it and I said, well, this is just a copy of this paperwork, but you've deleted some things. And that everybody in the bank was getting a little frantic at this point. And
I bet.
I whispered to my assistant, I don't think they liked that question. So, yeah, it turned out with the inside help of a bank manager there, he'd opened this account, which allowed him to kind of siphon off this money each month. And we didn't, like I said, it took me a few months or almost over a year to realize it, which I guess I take a little blame for that, but he was really sneaky. And he would also pad a few extra work days in, so there was some extra money there. Plus, he was manipulating the exchange rates.
Oh, okay, got it. So
Yeah.
your bookkeeper, your accounting, your auditors, they didn't know?
They weren't even aware of the other account.
Okay.
And when the budget would be a little short, he would tell them, hey, don't talk to Bert. he might fire you if you confront him on that. We're just going to have to make up the budget in other ways.
Okay.
Little did I know he's walking out the back door with the shortfall. So we'll fast forward to when I discovered this. I immediately hopped on a plane in Seattle and I flew down here, and I was trying to be really stealth and under the radar, right?
Right.
And so I didn't want him getting wind that I was coming, and my assistant had hired a lawyer, and we were kind of trying to be prepared before we confronted him. Well, it's 4 a.m. I've been on international flight the whole time. I'm very tired, and I'm in the airport in Manila. And as I'm boarding the plane, of all things, the person in front of me is one of my employees' husbands.
Oh, no.
Yes.
Okay.
So I begged him, hey, could you please not tell your wife that I'm here? It's really important, but I can't tell you why. But I promise on Tuesday, I'll tell you. And he promised, oh, sure, Bert, there's no problem. And as I sat in my seat, I thought, this is the Philippines. Chismis is very juicy.
Right.
I have no chance he's not going to tell his wife.
Okay.
And sure enough, by the time I arrived, already the whole office knew, oh my gosh, Bert's here on a surprise visit. My assistant brought him down under the guise of doing some paperwork for the company.
So he didn't know that you're here, and
somehow he was the only guy in the office that was unaware that I was in town. He was very surprised to see me, but didn't understand what it was for, and said, oh, I'm so happy to see you. I didn't know you were in the Philippines. And I said, well, you're probably not going to be as happy as you think to see me. I told him that we knew about the crime, and we knew he'd taken money, and we knew that
you confronted him in the...
right there in the office, and we even had a video camera rolling the whole time. Do you know what he said to me, which was crazy? I said, JP, you took a lot of money. Like, it's not a small amount. And his comment was, I understand, Bert, I took too much. And
too much?
And I looked at him and I said,
sorry.
well, 1 peso would have been too much, but that's an interesting perspective. So I told him, I'm going to have to go to the office and inform the employees about this and why you're not going to be coming in. But rather than do it in my words, I'd like to give you the opportunity to put it in your own words. And so I gave him a piece of paper and a pen, and he said, could I get my computer? And I said, no way, with a few more words. And I said, but here's a pen, and I'll give you all the time you need. And really in the back of my mind was, well, he was kind of signing his own confessional, right? So as he worked on that, I asked him if he needed anything from the office. And he said he needed his bag because it had some medicine for him. And that was the only thing he needed. So right. So we sent somebody to the office to get his bag, and came back, and my assistant and the attorneys immediately went through the bag and found all the receipts for wiring money. And then they even found a stack of 100,000 pesos.
That he was about to send to his family, I'm sure.
I don't know what he was going to do with it. We confronted him on that as well. And I said, we got your bag, but I noticed that there was 100,000 pesos in there. And
I presume that's your money.
Right, that's what I said. I'm going to presume this belongs to the office. And so I'm going to need you to sign this receipt for this. And he did. And so he was being very compliant. And I came out and I told the lawyer, hey, let's do a promissory note. And the lawyer said, oh, he'll never sign that. And I'm like, well, it's worth a shot. So we drafted a promissory note. I went in again to see how he's doing on his confession. Yeah. And I gave him the promissory note, and he signed that too. And then he wrote this whole confession, and he signed that one. So a pretty good day, we thought. It was a few weeks to get a warrant for his arrest. But in the meantime, I went back and I talked to my employees. And this was really interesting. So for me, I knew he was facing 20 to 40 years for this crime.
Right, because that's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money. And, I figured if somebody didn't learn their lesson in a couple years, they probably don't learn it in 40. So I was thinking, well, maybe we make a deal to get paid back, and he does a year or something. And I asked my managers in my company, hey, as Filipinos, I'm wondering what you guys think of this. And some of them were very deeply religious and were very close with him. And I expected some leniency and forgiveness.
Right.
You won't believe what they told me. They looked at me and said, Bert, this isn't your country. These aren't your laws. You may feel that way, but he knew what the law was, and he did it anyway. And they were really sore that they felt he'd jeopardized their jobs by jeopardizing the company. They really chewed me out, and they said...
Were you surprised, though?
I was really surprised. I don't think it would have been the same at my U.S. office. And what I was surprised by was... they were insisting that we pursue this as a company, And if not, they've told me flat out they would be losing respect for me because I was not adhering to their Philippine customs and laws. And they really felt he should go to jail. So now we'll kind of fast forward to when we got the warrant for his arrest. And
Okay.
this was also a very unique Philippine experience for me.
Okay.
Yeah, and most of my foreign friends find this interesting. So why I'm telling you the story. So we got the warrant, and I happened to be here because I knew we were getting it.
Okay.
And I felt like, well, the day we get the warrant, we should probably run down and get him arrested.
Like,
because,
yeah.
because if he caught wind of the warrant, he might go into hiding and stuff. So he was now living in a town that was about 3 hours away. He was teaching. He was a professor of all things now.
Okay, he's now teaching.
Yeah, Christ the King school. So anyway,
a religious school. He's teaching kids.
I might have even been an ethics class. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Anyway, we took the warrant to the police, and I said, "Hey, we have this warrant. We'd really like to get him arrested." And they said, "Well, that's 3 hours away.
Oh, geez.
You're gonna need
so inconvenient."
Yeah, they said, you're gonna need to rent a car.
Why? The police, they don't have their own cars? I mean, patrol car? Or?
I'm just a dumb American at this point. So I rented the car, and then they told me, well, I was also going to need to rent a driver to drive us there. And
the cops don't know how to drive?
Well, so we got the car and the driver, and then I had an idea that, well, if I was going to drive 6 hours round trip because of this jerk, that it was right next to one of my favorite snorkel spots and restaurants. And I said, hey, let's rent a second car, and that way, while you bring him back, my assistant and my fiance at the time were both with us, and I said, we'll do a little snorkel and have lunch.
Yeah, why not? Arrest the guy, and then you go out snorkeling.
Yeah, sure.
And okay.
So we did. We got 2 cars, and
how many police was with you?
We had about 4 police with us from the town. So, so the key was we knew that his class was from 9 to 10 a.m. And so I had told the police, hey, we got to make sure we get there by 9:10 to arrest him. Because that was the only time we knew when he would be someplace. Well, on our way to arrest him, we needed to drop one of their friends at the port, and we had a few detours. And I'm watching my clock, and it's 9:50, and we don't get to the school till 10:10.
Did they show up like on time?
No,
of course
this is Philippines. So,
yeah, okay, Filipino time, of course.
So the police were getting pretty uncomfortable too, because they knew that this foreigner had gone to great lengths and rented a car and rented drivers and had done all this.
As they should.
And now we're showing up pretty late. And so we got out of the cars and asked the security guy, hey, has JP left already, or is he still here? And we were informed, nope, he left about 8 minutes ago. And so I shot kind of a laser look at the police, who were very uncomfortable at this point. So there was some smoke coming out of my ears. So we got back in, and they said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, we can go to his home, but I seriously doubt it's going to be hard to find him there, because we don't have a search warrant. We just have an arrest warrant. So what I didn't know, because they'd been speaking Bisaya or Tagalog, was on the way they had radioed ahead to the city police and said, hey, we're coming into town to arrest this guy, giving them notice.
Okay.
Well, we got in the car, and I'm very grumpy sitting in the back seat. And
the grumpy foreigner.
Yes.
Okay.
And we start driving to his home address, and I'm thinking, this is never going to work. What a waste of time. I've wasted now 6 hours and how many dollars. And they get another call, and it turns out that the city police there had gone to the school and arrested him already, but they didn't want to process the arrest till we got there, because they wanted to let us see it.
Oh,
and they said he's at the police station. So we do a U-turn. We start heading to the local police station.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, and so when we get there, he was very stoic sitting there. Then they read the charges to him, and they handcuffed him right in front of us. Okay. And my fiance was there capturing this all on phone, which was pretty awkward. And so we had him, and then we did a group photo, and so the whole police department was there with us. And we did a group photo to celebrate his capture.
Why?
Well, it's pretty unusual having a foreigner in this
prosecuting a Filipino that actually got caught.
And it was in a province, one of the provinces. So
Also, they haven't seen a lot of foreigners there.
Not a lot of foreigners with I had my assistant and my fiance. We were quite the entourage. So we had our photo shoots, and I said I was very grateful to these guys for getting him before we showed up. And I said, hey, we're going down to this little favorite spot of mine for lunch. If anybody'd like to join us, come on down. And we got 12 takers that came to lunch.
From 4 to 12?
Yes.
Okay, we won't say no to, food.
No,
food.
We had pretty much the whole police department, and then we were finished. At one point we were eating, and I said, well, hey, where's JP? And he said, well, he's in the car. And I said, well, who's watching him? And they said, well, at that point, I don't know the names, but George and Steve. And then I realized that they were trading out. So one would go watch and one come back in. And I had to see this with my own eyes. So I walked out there, and sure enough,
he's still there.
He's sitting in the back of the car on a hot day. Fortunately, the windows are rolled down, handcuffed, crying. And I came back in.
And while you guys are having lunch, it's okay. I mean,
I actually felt a little guilty, and I suggested that maybe we should send him a sandwich or something. Not anything too good, but
sandwich.
Yeah, maybe a sandwich and some water.
Right.
So they did. They ordered him, and everybody was full. And I said, well, nobody wants dessert. I buy dessert too. Oh. We'll have a halo halo and ice cream sundae. So we all had dessert.
You don't offer free food. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So they're full.
They had the dessert, the police.
And so my fiance and my assistant and I were going to go snorkel. And I said, okay, so you guys in car 1 can take him back because he had to go back to the city the warrant was in to get processed. And then car 2, we'll go snorkeling and we'll be behind you guys, but we'll meet you at the police station. We needed to meet at the police station.
Right.
So we went out. We had a very leisurely snorkel. We came back. We took some showers. It's been about an hour and a half that we were in the water. And I looked over, and he was still sitting there in the car crying. And I said, what? I thought you guys were going. Like, this has been a long time. And they're like, they weren't too worried about the criminal. So, okay, well, whatever. We hopped in the cars. It's starting to get dusk now. The sun's going down. And I figured, well, this is probably the end of the story. But as we're driving home, one of the officers turned around and said, hey, we're going to be going by this cock farm. And I was thinking about buying one of these roosters. Would you mind if we stop? And he was very polite about it. And I just thought,
farm, like a
fighting cocks, yeah. And I just started laughing, and I thought, well, sure.
Aren't you thinking like it was like a joke? Like, is this really happening? Like, we are supposed to be booking this criminal, and then we're like three hours away from the city.
P, at this point, I didn't know what to expect. It had been a very strange day. We stopped at this cock farm. Is that what you said? Okay, and we got out, and there was some negotiating and haggling over, it was a particularly fine rooster, and they threw him in a box and put him in the trunk. So now literally there's this rooster sitting behind the seat, and the entire trip we're hearing him.
Why in the trunk? You should just put it on the lap of the prisoner.
I wasn't going to hold him on my lap.
Okay.
So anyway, so now we're driving, and I don't want to make anybody look bad, but I will tell you that the police have a different way of driving than citizens. We drove fast, real fast.
Right.
And we were about halfway home, and they got another call, and his parents had showed up at the jail already. And
in the city?
Yeah, and we were still an hour and a half away. His parents had found out about the charges and the arrest and got together their family car, and they were already there waiting for us. So by the time we get to the city, it's now nighttime, and I get out of the car, and guess who the first person I see is?
The mom.
Correct. His mother. And his mother immediately is telling...
What, kneeling and then sorry? And
no, she came up to me, and my goodness, my son is such a good boy, and she's crying. And so I said, ma'am, are you aware how much he took? Like, it's not a small amount. And, oh, no, but he would never do any... He's a very good boy. And I said, well, it's 4.3 million pesos. And she stopped. Well, so then... an unusual thing happened. I don't know if this is a Philippine thing or not, but we went into the police house, and one of the officers said, hey, would you like some time alone with the convict? And I thought...
Some time alone?
Well, I thought maybe that would be good. Maybe I could talk to him about repaying. Did he have any idea to repay? Was the money around somewhere? So
right.
I took the opportunity to go in, but it was very unusual. As I went in and sat down, I noticed that he was handcuffed to the table, and closed and locked the door.
Oh.
Interpret as you will. Anyway.
Maybe that was the time you have to beat him up, or that's the thing?
I don't know.
Okay, so
But about 10
did
minutes.
you beat him up?
No, we
No?
talked for a while, and then I knocked on the door, and I said, hey, we're done talking. And I did notice that when they opened the door, they did take a look at him and looked a little bit surprised that everything was...
Because it's not bloody, I guess.
So anyway, he spent the night in jail. He got bailed out the next day. 600,000 pesos on a 4.3 million peso theft. What I've found out subsequently is that bail in the Philippines is not refunded. So in the U.S., if you post bail
Mhm.
or your bond, if you show up at all your hearings, then it's refunded to you. In the
Right.
Philippines, even if you show up and you go through the trial, if
The-
you're found guilty, then the court system keeps that bail money. So that bail money won't be used to reimburse me. It goes to the court.
So the money was from what? A friend of his or from his?
Yeah, he had some friends in high places, apparently. Or maybe, yeah, I don't know. You have a
Okay.
good theory. Maybe it was my own money. I'm
It's
not
your
sure.
own money.
Well, so now you kind of fast forward to the trial. And unfortunately, so Philippine trials work a lot different than the U.S. So in the U.S., we'll schedule. Then they'll look at your case and say, well, this is a 3-day case or a 1-week case or a 10-day case. And they schedule a block of time. Here, interestingly enough, you get one appearance before the judge every month. And so the trial took almost 2 years for the trial. So the Philippines is very interesting. I learned this too. So in the U.S., people may be used to like a civil case and then a criminal case.
Right.
And they're handled separately, different lawyers. Well, in the Philippines, you can combine these two cases. If you don't want to use the public prosecutor, you can have your lawyer handling the civil case do both. So they're combined. One of the quirks of this is that kind of once it's filed, it can't be unfiled, right? Most cases, I understand, there's some negotiation on the amount and the repayment because the Philippine adds extra time for every 1,000 pesos that's unrepaid.
Right.
So that time added up, I found out later, that time added up to be over 40 years, but there's a 40-year maximum. So if it went to trial, would get a minimum 40-year sentence for these crimes because it mandates by the amounts. We had our settlement conference and we tried to work something out where I said, hey, how about, you sign the family home to me, but the family can live there until the parents pass away. And then
maybe they use the money anyway to buy the home or to remodel the home.
They had used a lot of the money for this. And so he had agreed to this initially, but then we never heard from him. And my Philippine lawyer tells me this is pretty unusual, but the case went to the full trial. And then we had the judgment, the day of judgment. And I again was here. I came to the Philippines to make sure I was there. And it was very interesting. So we had a packed courthouse and they asked him, JP, please rise. And we're going to read these counts, and started reading the charges, qualified theft in this amount, qualified theft this amount. And he ended up getting 12 convictions for qualified theft.
All guilty.
All guilty. All of these crimes added up to, I don't know, over 100 years. But again, there's the 40-year maximum. So now I thought, well, this is good. However, I was surprised that they did not arrest him after they read these charges. In the U.S., you would be immediately arrested, booked, and so on. But I found out, in the Philippines, you can file some paperwork for an appeal right away, and you're released. And you can also file some paperwork that you'd like your original bond transferred to the appeal. And so he actually walked out of court that day with 12 felony convictions and went home. So you might be asking, where does this end? How does it, what happens? Well, apparently it will be more than 2 more years on appeal, still ongoing until the appeal is completed. He's free, and during this time he opened a business and got married, and there's not much you can do. So
he has a business now and he got married?
Yeah, he opened a restaurant. So I guess, what I learned as a foreigner, and I guess the piece of wisdom I would pass on is the Philippine justice system moves incredibly slow.
Right.
Maybe there's not a whole lot of justice, but it helped me understand why there's maybe more corruption and white collar crimes in the Philippines, because it turns out it's pretty hard to get a conviction. I'm assuming someday there would be. I don't think there would be restitution of the the stolen money because that disappears pretty quickly. And
Did he actually tell you where the money went?
well, we found a few things. I didn't know you could buy a real Christmas tree in the Philippines, but I found
We
out.
have real Christmas trees here. Where?
I don't know, but I know they cost 40,000 pesos. So we found a receipt for the 40,000 peso Christmas tree. We saw a lot of, I think it's called Palawan Express or something, that money that was wired to his mother. And when we dug into that, we found out it was used they did an extensive remodel on the family home, and they had a very nice Sorry Story store with high-end liquors. So, there and partying with his buddies, I guess, but no, none of the money was left over, so.
Are you suing the guy that helped him in the bank, the bank manager, or the bank itself? Just sue the big guys too. I mean,
I've been told that suing a bank is another long, pretty onerous process, but
right.
There is some regulatory boards that might be able to help and look into was there anything done impropriety, and there may be some way of recouping. But for now,
and you're okay with this? You're taking
no,
calmly.
I've had a few years to process. It's okay, but no, I mean, I just think there's an important lesson for people. As a foreigner, we think, hey, I can enforce my rights through the court system and such, but the recourse in this kind of event is long, it's expensive, and often won't come to the conclusion you would expect to see in say, the United States. I don't want this to be framed as a Philippine thing.
Mm-hmm.
This is an asshole thing. Like, he didn't take the money because he's a Filipino, and that's what Filipinos do. He took the money because he's a jerk. The Philippines may deserve extra caution, but I don't think this is a Philippine exclusive thing.
Again, I'm so sorry, and I hope you still find it in your heart to know that we are not all like that.
I do, absolutely.
I hope you still love the Philippines.
I do. Philippines are great, yeah.
Well, as you can see, guys, it's a fascinating look into our Filipino justice system. Well, that's it for today. I'll be back in 3 more days with something new. Bye. Just one last thing before you go. If you think about it, I'm kind of like your bartender, listening to your comments and questions, giving you advice when I can, and brewing up some intoxicating content for your enjoyment. The only thing I ask in return is a small tip in the form of a thumbs up on this video, subscribing to my channel, sharing this video with friends, and hitting the notification bell so you know when your next round has been poured. I promise, it'll only take 10 seconds to do, and your tip will make my day. You wouldn't want to shaft your bartender, would you? And for last call, why not enjoy some of my other videos too? See you real soon!